Well, good afternoon, everybody. As we pass through the vernal equinox and welcome astronomical spring, I'd like to call this the March meeting of the Cape Cod Gateway Airport Commission to order. Today is the 21st of March and the time is 16:03. Have a roll call, please, Sue. Yoo-hoo.
Sue, are you there? You're muted if you are.
Hello,
There we go.
Roll call, Sue, please.
There we go.
Thank you.
I don't have my sheet in front of me, so I'm winging it. So Chairman Griffin,
Here.
Vice Chairman Weil,
Clerk Weil here.
Clerk Weil, sorry, Vice Chairman Flores,
Here.
Commissioner Beerworth is not present. Commissioner Bailey,
Present.
and who am I missing? Commissioner
Gio.
Gio is, yes, gotcha.
Yeah. And Commissioner DeGeorge is not with us.
Is not there. Okay. Okay, we do have a quorum though.
Thank you very much. Okay, we've had the roll call. If you just quietly face the nearest flag and recognize our Pledge of Allegiance. United States.
To the flag of the United States of
States of America, and to the
Republic
republic which
and
stands
one
one
nation
nation
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have some, I believe we have some minutes, what, a two months there, Sue? That you sent out, am I right?
No. Those, we don't have any minutes for approval, correct?
Okay.
Oh, no, I did send the 2 minutes. Why is it not on there?
You
Yes,
did.
we have December and January.
That's what I thought. Okay, everybody should have received December and January minutes. If you have and you have no objections or you're approved as presented, I would entertain a motion one at a time for the December and January commission meetings. So
Let's make a motion to approve the December committee meeting minutes as presented.
second, thank you. All in favor, raise your hand, signify aye.
Aye.
Same for January, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the committee meeting minutes of January 2023 as presented.
Second, please.
Seconded.
Any additions, complications, or additions? If not, all in favor, signify aye, raise your hand. Thank you. That's unanimous. Okay, Sue, both of those are good. We now open to public comment. Can't see everybody that's out there, but if a member of the public would like to address the commission, please do so. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and you've got 2 minutes to present what you need, and we welcome you. We've got some override here.
Yeah, this,
I think it's Wendy.
okay, let's try that again.
I got hit in Yarmouth.
I can't hear you, sir.
Okay. Well, Yarmouth pulled the fast one. They changed it April 1st. And they went to the.
I'm not
I
sure
know,
where they
no,
feed.
fuck.
If everybody
These
could,
are-
please mute
Neighbors.
their microphones. There we go. All right, let's try that again, Griff.
Okay, do we have public comment? If so, please ID yourself, tell us where you're from, and 2 minutes to give us your speech, please, or whatever's on your mind.
I'll speak.
Okay, go ahead, Betty.
Hi, yeah, my name is Betty Lutke. I'm a Barnstable Town Councilor representing Precinct 3. This is the first Airport Commission meeting that I've attended.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. I have a great interest in the airport. I got my first pilot's license there in 1982. And so I have fond memories of the airport, and I went to the MIPA meeting. You graciously held it for the public. And Katie took us around in a van, and that was fantastic to see the lay of the land and all the things that you guys do. I'm very interested in the airport and its future, and I'm excited about what you're doing with your proposals. I'm not sure I agree with all of them. One thing I did, I made a MIPA comment. I haven't gotten any response to it, so I don't know if I did it correctly, that I would really like to see a joint use solution out at Otis. And I don't know if that has been something that you have pursued in the past. I really think that merits serious study with 2 10,000-foot runways with precision approaches, visual guidance, and clear zones for miles. It's just something I'm putting out there, but I'm here to listen. I'm here to learn. I'm new. I'm one of the newer town councilors. So just thank you very much. And I'm just here to absorb. And I just wanted to throw some of those ideas out there. Not to hinder anything you're doing, but to always offer options and regional perspectives on air travel. I am a commercial airline pilot. I fly Boeing 787s for American Airlines, so I'm somewhat familiar with the air transportation system. I have a master's degree in aerospace operations. So again, just thank you for your time, and I'm here to learn and listen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your input. And it sounds to me like you're more competent than the most recent guy I heard interview for the FAA administrator. Any response to Town Councilor Lutke? Okay,
This
yes,
is,
John.
former town councilor John Flores, but Betty, this is where town councilors go after they're off the council. They come to the airport commission. So welcome.
Thank you again, Counselor.
Griff, if I could just respond to the counselor real quick.
Please do.
Sure. Thank you for joining us, Councilor Lutke. Just wanted to let you know that we will be looking as part of the environmental assessment. We will be looking at an alternative that includes a review of Joint Base Cape Cod to see what options we have for that. So that is in the queue and it's in our scope of work.
Thank you so much for that, because that's what my comment was, as doing it as a reasonable option, a reasonable alternative that should be studied in an environmental study such as the one you're doing. So that's great news to hear. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you again. Any other commissioners' response? If not, report from the subcommittees.
I hate to interrupt, Mr. Chairman. Are you still taking public input?
Sure.
All right, could I have just a couple of minutes? I'll be very brief.
Okay, tell us who you are and where you're from, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paul Phelan. I live in Barnstable resident. And I want to thank you all for this opportunity. As Betty said, this is my first meeting in person, but I have caught a few of them on video. And I want to thank you each. You're experts in your field. And I could not keep up with the language. To tell you the truth, it's aviation is a separate industry. I printed newspapers my whole life, and I get lost in this aviation chatter a little bit. But I know I have respect for all of you. But my main purpose for speaking up today is twofold. My first is to express my displeasure with what I call the non-abatement office that is located at the airport. Last summer, we had our first neighborhood meeting in a couple of years, and a few of the citizens were expressing what a pain in the neck the airplanes are coming over us. And we was discussed openly, and one person who was a pilot said he looks on his flight aware and said that they're coming from your airport, which the name's changed. I don't want to mispronounce it, Hyannis Airport, Gateway Airport, because we have, I looked up, there are 14 airports within 35 miles of us. So you can't start pointing fingers without knowing where the problem is. And so it was brought up that they did have an abatement office, and it was immediately pointed out that it was a waste of time. It's the fox watching the hen house. And so one day recently, it was about approximately a month ago, we did have 3 planes come over, very low, very loud. I decided, let me test the system. I don't know if any of you have gone through this, but I'll tell you, it's it's alarming to me, my response. I got, when I filed a complaint, they wanted some proof. I told them that I had looked on the flight away. I sent the proof in. They said, I got an email back, was basically a robo email with the FAA regulations. Basically, they thumbed my nose at me, Mr. Chairman. They said, you know, nothing we can do about it. We have the muscle of the FAA behind us. And that's really is alarming to me. I looked a little further into it, and they determined that I asked how many complaints they received last year. They said 40. I asked how many of those were abated. I never got a response, but it is such a waste of time for a resident in this town to file a complaint with the airport, because you get back a response with a link to the FAA that's about 400 pages. It's all legalese. So that being said, I just want to add one more thing, and I'll wrap this up, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we got a pretty full agenda, so I'd appreciate that. But
Another
I
30
appreciate, but I'm not trying to cut you off. I appreciate what you're saying.
Mr. Chairman, in 30 seconds, I'll wrap it up with this, because I don't want to take up any more of your time. But regarding the expansion, I was at the meeting at the airport. I saw the place, one resident, everybody saw the vacant parking lot, and every day I drive by there, it's vacant. It's basically, the airport, in my mind, is a filling station for airplanes. And the work that the airport's going forward with is not required by the FAA. And I hope you really get your pen and pencil out and just don't go along with this, because they state it's around 25 million, it's FAA money, but that's still our money. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. And I appreciate the time that all of you put into this. I really do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phelan, and we appreciate your input. Management, Katie, you would make note of this, and we will get back to you.
I very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, please? Any other comments from the public? Any commissioners' comments?
I believe that Eric Droog from Aloft Aviation is here, and he wanted to state a few comments as he has interest in the executive session item that we have at the end of today's agenda.
Okay, I don't see him on the panel here, but if he's there, Eric, you're welcome to chime in.
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Eric.
Yep. Okay, you hear me okay?
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay, great. How's everyone doing today? As Katie said, Eric Drugi, my company is Aloft Aviation. I have an aircraft management company, but we also have a little subset of that company, which is Aloft Flight. That is a flight school and aircraft rental and scenic tours operation. Was not operational last year at Hyannis. We last operated there in 2021. We didn't have a ability to do anything there last year because we didn't have a location. Historically, we have operated out of the Air Cape Cod building. We would sublease from, at the time, Retrix, and then Ross, and then ultimately Atlantic, but we have not been there since Atlantic has been there. So after hearing that the museum was no longer a player for the building and having interest in it in the beginning, back in that bid process, we didn't bid, but certainly it has been something that has been on my mind for a number of years, that I would like to operate that building for not just my business, but for the flight school. And I understand you will see my lease proposal in your executive session a little later on. So you can't probably ask me questions about the things that you haven't read yet, but I just thought I'd make myself, I'll make my presence aware to the board that I'm here. And if anyone has questions for me at any point, I'll be listening into the meeting. And I hope you like the look of my proposal, and we're anxious to move forward with it if we can.
Thanks very much, Eric.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Welcome to Eric.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Okay, report from subcommittees. Finance, Norm, could you give us the report on that, please?
Yes, sir. Hello, everybody. The Cape Cod Gateway Airport Finance Subcommittee, we met at 8:30 on March 7th. Commissioners Weil, Flores, and Bailey were present. There was no new business. I will go through a couple of technical things, all of which are going to be discussed at this meeting. We discussed FIN 0323-1 to review and approve the fiscal 2024 proposed operating budget. We reviewed it and voted to move it to the full meeting. So we won't be making comments here since it'll be discussed at the meeting. FIN 0323-2, review and approve the lease agreement by and between the town of Barnstable, Cape Cod Gateway Airport, and Michelle Kennedy DBA Studio Gallery at the airport. Again, we reviewed that agreement and we voted to move this to the full meeting for discussion and potential approval. We moved on to FIN 0323-3, review and approve an award and contract for fiscal year 23 airfield pavement marking. We were brought up to speed on all that's involved in that process and the requirements for the painting. We voted to move that to the full commission today, so you will be hearing a discussion of that. We received a discussion, FIN 0323-4, to review and approve travel approval letter for airport staff. That'll be discussed here in front of the whole commission. The agreement was voted on and moved to be moved to the full commission. We went into moved on to FIN 0323-5, review and approve amendment number 1 by and between Cape Cod Gateway Airport and Judith Getz for on-call professional media services for integrated communication services. Again, the manager brought us up to speed on the agreement and we voted to move it to the full commission meeting, so that will be discussed. We got the basic updates that we will be discussing at this meeting. We went into executive session to discuss future lease agreements for 110 Mary Dunn Way. We came out of executive session and we closed the meeting, and the meeting was a long one for us. It was over at 10:12. So that was a long meeting, and it's the subject of much of what is being discussed at this meeting today.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments for Commissioner Whale? Hearing none, we'll move on to infrastructure, and Commissioner Gio, I understand you're covering that report today.
Just getting myself off mute here.
Thank you.
The Infrastructure and Marketing Subcommittee met on March 7th at 10:31 a.m. Commissioners DeGeorge, Bearworth, and myself were present, and the meeting was virtual, was held by Zoom. Under new business, there was no unfinished business. Under new business, executive session was taken out of order to discuss strategy with respect to the lease of real property by and between the Cape Cod Gateway Airport and a future lessee for 110 Mary Dunn Way. As a discussion in open session may have detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the Airport Commission. Commissioner DeGeorge read the motion, and the Commissioner Gio moved to go into executive session at 10:34 a.m. The regular session of the Infrastructure and Marketing Subcommittee reconvened at 11:10 a.m. Commissioner Bearworth had left the meeting at that point. The option number 2 that was discussed during executive session was agreed to be forwarded to the full commission for a vote at the March meeting at this meeting. Unfinished business, IN 0323-2, review and approve Allies Air name change and sign updates. Allies Air has changed its name to Gull Air Holdings LLC, or Gull Air. Gull Air is continuing the process of working towards obtaining commuter authority with the FAA with the intention to provide high-frequency scheduled flights between Hyannis and Nantucket. They will continue the current on-demand service until they obtain commuter authority, and then they will segue intercounter service in the terminal. They anticipate 10 round trips per day in the future. The intention to fully retire the Allies Air name and operate exclusively as Gull Air stated. Gull Air will provide sign design drawings, construction plan, schedule, determination of the use of its lifts for the new sign placement. And the action that is required is for this agenda item to be forwarded to the full commission for approval. IN 03-23-1, monthly update airport business plan for FY 2023. This was previously provided to the subcommittee members and was not reviewed. Updates will be reviewed at the full commission meeting, which is today. And having no other business to discuss, the meeting was adjourned at 11:17 a.m.
Thanks very much. Any questions or comments regarding the Infrastructure and Marketing Subcommittee? If not, we'll move the agenda forward. Old business, unfinished, there is none. We certainly have new business. And the first one is COM 0323-1, and this is an update regarding WS development. And I'll turn that over to the airport manager.
Sure, thank you. So it looks like we have 3 folks with us today from WS Development to give us an update on where we're at. I'm sure everybody's excited to learn about the process moving forward for the retail plaza. We have Victoria McGuire with us. We have Lou Masiello, and we have Amanda Chisholm with us today. So I'd like to turn this over to Victoria. I believe, Victoria, you have a presentation that you'd like to supply.
That's right. Hi, everyone. It's great to see you all again.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. If it's okay, I'd love to steal the screen. We have some slides to run through briefly with you guys, but I will try to be efficient about it so that we have plenty of time to answer questions and chat at the end of the presentation. So as Katie said, I'm joined by my colleagues, Lou Masiello and Amanda Chisholm. On the call, you guys are going to be seeing a lot more of Amanda moving forward. She's taking the reins for what we will discuss in a minute, which is phase 2 of the project. But I thought that it would be a good idea to start with actually just a project update on phase 1. I know we've talked about this with the commission in the past, and I'm here with good news today. We have received, and I'm going to go to a site plan. Oh, that is very large. I'm going to have to, there we go. Hopefully that shows up on your screens a little bit better. So we have received approval from site plan review through the town of Barnstable to complete the phase 1 renovations of the property. Anything you see not in orange on your screen is included in phase 1. So it is the, excuse me, the renovation and re-tenanting of this main building that's on the property. Folks know this affectionately as, you know, the Kmart space, the former Kmart space, former Sports Authority space is over here. And along with the new tenants that we'll be bringing to the property as part of the redevelopment, the site will also get a pretty major overhaul, and it will look and feel very refreshed at the end of this phase 1. We sort of front loaded a lot of the work to upgrade the site into this first phase so that along with the fresh new tenants that will be joining us here, it will, when you arrive at the property, it will look and feel quite different than it does today. Lots of new landscaping, new parking lots, new lighting, all of the things that you would expect from kind of a modern day WS type shopping center. So we're very, very excited that has been approved. Related to that is the timeline. So moving down, and I don't know why these are jumping around, I apologize. Related to this, the timeline, many of you might have seen activity already starting out on the site. If you drove by recently, we've got some construction fencing up. That's just prep work that is starting. But we expect site work to begin in May. We're at the final, putting on the final touches for that. And we expect building work that we will be doing, which is primarily in the stretch of storefronts on either side of the former Sports Authority. We expect that also to begin sometime in May once building permits are issued by the town. So you will see a lot more activity in the next couple of months on the site. It's going to be really exciting. We will be working with our existing tenants on site to make sure that there's still access to those shops. So don't fear, you can still go to the paper store, Verizon store, or Ulta or Working Gear. Those will all remain open during the construction, and we have a plan in place to make sure that access is still provided to all of those open and operating tenants while the renovation is done. There'll have to be some kind of temporary shuffling when we're doing paving and such, but that is something we can certainly work around. I wanted to run through briefly, there's a number of these renderings, and some of them you've seen before, but just to refresh people's memory. Oh, so sorry about all the sizing issues. But just to refresh people's memory, this is what our vision for the site is, and this is really the first phase being shown here. So a lot of this is what will be coming to the property within the next year to 18 months or so. We're expecting most of the work to be completed this construction season, but I think a lot of the finishing touches will go in the following spring once we get through next winter. So some of the plantings that need to wait for a spring thaw will come after the holiday season next year, but by and large, a lot of this work will be done this construction season. As many of you know, there's a grocer coming to the site, and that is fairly well known here on the property, but we're looking forward to that. And as we've talked about in the past, a lot of the new tenancy will come with a lot more activity on the sidewalks, making it look and feel a lot more welcoming to folks who want to stroll around the property. This is an example of the seating area that will go outside the grocery store. This is just another view of the more activated sidewalks that will be coming with the renovation. These spaces exist currently. A number of them don't have tenants in them, but they will be re-tenanted. We've designed this so that it can accommodate tenants of various sizes. One of the things that is important to note is we don't have the names of some of the smaller tenants to share with you just yet. We will absolutely return and give you that update as we have them. But it was important for us in terms of phasing to figure out who the anchor tenants were going to be. And that's, we have an anchor tenant for the last half of the former Kmart space. And we have, as I mentioned, the grocery tenant for the Sports Authority space. And so getting those two tenants in place and their timeline settled is really what's going to help us actively market some of the smaller spaces that will fit in between. So we expect to have a lot more information for you on who those tenants might be within the next 6 to 9 months or so. Here we have another view of the stretch of stores that will be renovated. Everything will be refreshed. The green is something we've talked to the commission about quite a bit. Still, we think it's going to be a great space. I did actually look into the product that we're going to be using and confirm for Commissioner Flores that it is PFAS free. I know that was an issue that we left the last meeting and committed to look into. So that is something that we've confirmed we want to make sure of here at this site.
Thank you.
No problem. Yep. Understand that that's a priority for the commission, and there'll be a lot of areas for seating and spaces for people to come to the property and sit and not necessarily have to be participating in a shopping activity, but really I think there will be a lot of opportunities for people to gather here and like we've said before, sit and have a cup of coffee or an ice cream, or really stay a little bit longer than just a typical, one-stop errand that you might do at the property currently, because there's really not a lot of places for you to sit and linger. Here's an overhead, an aerial view just of what it will look like. Obviously, this is showing a lot more landscaping than is currently there. We expect to be using native plants that will flourish and do well in the Cape Cod climate. We've been working with landscape architects Halverson to identify what those plants are. And this is a view coming up the main entry drive. You may not notice it from this perspective, but this actually kind of condenses the drive aisles. Right now, there's a really large island in the middle, almost no man's land. Instead, we've chosen to really landscape either side of the drive aisle and make it just feel like a much more welcoming approach to the stores. This is another view kind of heading, this is looking towards the airport here. And I'll get through this quickly. I'm sorry. There are a lot of, you can see here our vision is to bring active uses like a restaurant, a family-friendly restaurant of some sort, potentially. None of those tenants are necessarily a sure bet just yet, but are kind of reflective of folks that we've been talking to about possibilities for taking some space in this first phase of the redevelopment. So that is the renderings. I just have one or two more slides to run through for you. Really, it's just an update on phase 2. I figure no time like the present to say, we've got this first slug behind us and we're already sort of looking to the future. I can go back to the slide that showed the phasing that I started at the deck with. But really, that is the area that there would be new buildings built on, and that will be a permitting process that Amanda, who's on the call today, will be leading. We don't have a filing planned anytime soon, but it is on our radar, and just wanted to let you guys know that even as the construction begins for phase 1, we will probably be back to you to start those conversations, just some of the visioning around what that would look like and how it would function, in the not too distant future. So we are really incredibly excited to be back and say we're off and running. We're earlier than we had actually expected. Our former lease, our old lease, doesn't actually expire until 2024. But we got through COVID and really found that folks were excited to get going on the project. And so we are going to be able to kick it off this spring as expected. So I will stop talking now and open it up for questions. And Lou and Amanda, please feel free to join me if you have things you also want to add.
Thank you, Victoria. Any comments from our commissioners, questions about the time frame, the May construction start?
Can't wait.
I have a
John.
question.
Yep.
I'm just curious, relative to what's gone on at some malls across the country, including most recently here in Hingham at Derby Street. Is there any consideration for any kind of pedestrian walkway protection or security structures? I noticed I was at Derby Street a few weeks ago in front of the Apple store, which had that tragic accident. There have been pillars put up so that if someone were to drive down that lane again and somehow lose control of his or her car, supposedly those pillars would stop that vehicle from moving forward. I'm just curious. That's a real long walkway along the perimeter, if you will, of phase 1, if there is any consideration for that kind of thought. And perhaps that's where public malls are going. I'm not really sure, not being in the business. So I'd just like to comment on that.
Oh, Lou, I saw you came off mute. Do you want to answer it?
Well, I'm happy to. I just figured rather than tinker back and forth with the mute, it's just to make sure all the other members on the screen know. I think everybody knows what Commissioner Flores is referring to in Hingham, but everybody might not know that we are also the owner of the Derby Street shops in Hingham. WS Development is we're the same firm that owns both properties. I think many of you know that, but just to make sure that that's a commonly understood fact. And what you noticed in Hingham subsequent to that tragic accident was actually installed by Apple. They've done that in many of their stores. They have under our lease, tenants often control the premise that they actually lease. They often control portions of the site. And there is a portion of sidewalk that is controlled, not leased, but controlled by Apple under their lease. And they have, what you've seen, they've done at Hingham and in several other locations. I think while they try to get a sense of whether what happened was a single isolated incident, whether it was accidental, and I don't know that any of that has come out yet. It's still, as far as I know, under investigation. While they figure out exactly what occurred there, they did that, I think, to just be excessively cautious. And I think we have yet to find out what really was behind the circumstance in Hingham. But across our portfolio, we are taking that experience to heart and trying to figure out if there are places that are particularly vulnerable. There is somewhat of a balancing act, right? We want these places to feel open, welcoming, and inviting, and not particularly fortress-like. But at the same time, we need them to be safe. And we don't have an answer to that yet. We don't have a sort of a conclusion to that. It's something that we think about now and will continue to think about. But generally, our view on this is that at high probability areas where there's a higher likelihood of an interaction between a pedestrian and an automobile or a building and an automobile, we want to do a more thorough job of protecting those areas with measures that don't feel very uninviting. We want them to still feel like a place people would be comfortable strolling and enjoying. And so that's sort of a work in progress, but there are places like that across our portfolio where we focus on those, those intersection areas, those areas where an automobile and a pedestrian may by their natural, site design interact, and try to put benches or bollards or change the design to make sure that we're not encouraging those interactions.
Thank you
Sometimes
much.
it comes down to merely slowing the automobile, right? Speed bumps, or as Victoria mentioned, narrowing the width of a roadway so that the travel velocity on those roadways is reduced by the roadway design itself.
I was thinking more along the lines of where people will be congregating, eating outside or having a cup of coffee, sort of focal points. I'm not necessarily suggesting that we want, numerous perimeters of barriers set up at all.
Right.
But I just think in those areas where there's going to be 10, 12, 20 people outside, that, to me, it would be a common sense approach to design instruction now based on where society has, what we have evolved into, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
Just an observation.
Thank you. Yeah. Certainly important. Thank you.
Okay, continuing. Yes, Norm.
We talk about having space for people to congregate. Is it at all possible to, and I know you're in the business of renting space, so I know space is expensive, but I'm involved in a number of groups that are always looking for a meeting place for, 15, 20 people, where we can get together and hold our little business meetings. They tend to be nonprofits or clubs or things like that. Is it possible to think about a possible space for use by the public for that?
Hi, Norm. Thank you. That's a great point. What I would say is, while we're not at this time programming space specifically for that type of use, one of the things that we've been able to do in the interim before the redevelopment was started was work with different organizations to allow them to use some of the vacant spaces that we have until there's a permanent tenant found. The spaces may not be set up for full, audio visual use if that's something that you would be in need of. But we certainly work with different groups to allow them to use both the parking lot or interior spaces on an as needed basis if we have vacancy and folks need a resource. So it's something that we could certainly consider doing as we're continuing to fill up spaces. If we have vacancy, we'd be happy to talk with you about it.
I mean, I don't want to take up a whole lot of time on it. We're not looking for audio-visual conference spaces or things like that. Lots of times we end up in libraries that have a space, but the operating hours of libraries aren't as good. And number of these meetings are in the early evening, as an example. So I throw it on the table. Your designers might have come up with something that it may work for everybody. People who go to those meetings buy things from vendors all over the place. So I bring it up as an idea, and I appreciate you taking time to listen to me.
Absolutely. The other thing I'd add to that is, as we begin to round out the tenants on the that are joining us, there may actually be food and beverage operators that have spaces that are appropriate for that type of use as well. It's something we see at Derby Street and Hingham quite a bit. There are a number of restaurants there that have kind of set aside spaces that accommodate just that number of people, 10, 15 in their own set aside. So you're not in a restaurant that's busy and you can't hear, but give folks a space to have a meeting and potentially a bite to eat if it's a later evening meeting and you're missing dinner or something like that. So that's also a possibility. We'll see what type of tenants might be able to provide that space. We'll definitely keep you posted.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I see somebody from our audience that Betty has her hand up.
Yeah, town councilor, what's that yellow hand says? It's either stop, caution, or let me in.
Yeah, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to offer a comment or not. Is that okay?
Well, we'll give you one shot at it, Betty. Go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to pick up on something that Mr. Flores said, and also one of Lou's comments about Derby Street. Since you are reimagining the parking lot, that looks fantastic with the landscaping. I love that. We in the downtown area, probably some of you have been where we work with the contractor Jeff Speck on the Great Streets program with Taco doing two-way on Main Street. And one of the things that he has an enormous amount of data on is the protection offered by parked vehicles. And in Derby Street, and I know, except I've been there many times, it's a beautiful venue. I know the Apple store had the plaza in front of it, and the preponderance of the stores there have parking in front of them. And I don't think I saw that in your reimagined parking. That might be something to think about at this point, is putting parking all along that edge. And that does provide that impenetrable barrier, which is very protective of that. And that's just one of the comment. I thought, Mr. Flores brought up something really important, and this would be the time now that you are doing that redesign. And because it does work so well and has so much data to support the safety of parked vehicles protecting pedestrians. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Betty, town councilor. Moving right.
Do you mind if I just respond to that briefly? Because I think those
Please
are some great points. There are a couple of locations that we are reconfiguring the parking, and think that that's a really great point. Right now, there's no head-in parking in front of the Verizon T-Mobile paper store stretch. So that is one area you will see a different type of parking. And to the councilor's point, may help folks coming down these aisles have an additional barrier. Another feature of the site that's a little hard to see because the site's so large here is this is actually a pedestrian sidewalk walkway that connects the spaces with greenery on either side and trees planted throughout. Another way of sort of creating both a calming, pedestrian friendly space, but also it does provide a little bit of a slowdown for cars that I've seen, at least when I've been on the site, go through the parking lot at high speeds rather than get to the main drive aisles. And then lastly, around the green, for that very point that the councilor made, we have head-in parking situated all around the green, as well as trees and anchored benches that kind of surround the green to provide some additional, that will provide some additional protection. It wasn't designed for that purpose, but I think it will also help achieve that that set aside or that barrier that might protect people as well.
One thing I see there that is very where you're right about where your index is there.
Mhm.
There is currently kind of a merge there. It's a fork and you've turned it into a 90-degree intersection. And I think that's going to make things much, much better and less likely to have a little, shall we say, competition to see who gets through there first.
Yeah, you're completely right. People fly through here, even though we have the four-way stop sign here. And this jog here, while not necessarily intuitive as you'd probably want it to be a straight shot, is actually designed to do that. It slows people down. They have to kind of take a pause in order to stay in their appropriate lane. And so I do think this intersection will be improved with the redesign as well. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Victoria, have you thought about, as you mentioned, those people fly through there, that's because it's a straightaway.
Mhm.
Have you thought about changing the geometry of the parking area to create a requirement to kind of zigzag your way through there and break up that straightaway?
It is something that we looked at, different configurations. Parking is something that our tenants are fairly particular about. And so anything that sort of closes off a main right of way is something that tenants don't tend to be in favor of. And they put a lot of restrictions around parking numbers when they come to the sites because they want to ensure that folks don't have a perception that they won't be able to find parking easily and conveniently. But we will be having actually raised crosswalks here, and we've considered one here to do just that. Is, if people zip off 132, there is a moment where they really are sort of forced to slow down. Most of them do, but the folks who don't will have, and there's another one shown here with these arrows. This is where you can see where a raised crosswalk would be. This will be the time that kind of gets folks to pause and really slow down.
Yeah, there's also one point that isn't quite obvious on this image related to what was mentioned a minute ago about two driveways sort of merging together in a surprising fashion. And that is, I don't know who has the Victoria, if you put your hand along the front of the road of the stores, front of the grocer, please.
Mm-hmm.
Today, if you were driving on that road right in front of that, that's what used to be Sports Authority. And then the next building down is what the Cardis. You were driving to the left on that roadway today. There's no green there. You just merge with the road Victoria was talking about. And people on either of those, whether you're on the road in front of the stores or the road near IHOP, both people think they're the only ones there. They come down towards Airport Road in a I don't know if I'm pointing the right way, in a perfect triangle funnel.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing with that point, that particularly intense point, is turning the road in front of the stores so that it actually, what you described, Commissioner, where it actually turns 90 degrees and you have to zigzag. You can't just drive straight in front of all those stores all the way to Airport Road. If you're on that roadway in front of the stores, you have to slow down, take a real left-hand turn and tie into the other road and take a real right-hand turn to get to Airport Roadway.
Lou, that's precisely what I think I was trying to describe in my comments.
Right, exactly. And that's a perfect example of that type of change to the design.
Victoria, if there's no other questions from the public or from the commission, do you have a graphic that shows the connection between Airport Road or Barnstable Road and the property?
Oh, if you give me a moment, I can get it. I don't have it readily available, but I will just point out the location that it has been. It actually may be easier to talk about in this visual than show you the engineered version, to be perfectly honest, because it's zoomed in. The connection that Katie is referencing, as many of you know, we had committed to formalizing a connection from the airport through to the property. Right now, there's sort of an informal path that winds its way over here. It has been, it's a footpath that's been developed over years. It's right at the bend in the road. And so we were asked to look here at maybe providing access here, which is a safer way to cross the road. It conveniently sort of dovetails with some sidewalk. There's not a lot of sidewalk on Barnstable Road, but with the sidewalk that's there. There's also a light right here on Barnstable Road. So there's an overhead light for folks who are crossing at this, if they happen to be crossing in the dark, would have some better lighting. There'll also be additional lighting placed on the property. The one challenge we faced with this area that we worked through with the town to see what we could do is there's a grade change here, and so we are going to be required to put in a couple of steps. I believe it's 4. There'll be a landing pad and then 4 steps up to get onto the property. The grade is not as significant here, which is why the path works so well. But up here, we will have a couple of steps that would get people onto the property. Once up into the property, it'll be very easy to get on the sidewalk here, which is side 5 below, cross over here at the crosswalk and kind of make the loop around that we've talked about in the past. So we did come up with a design that worked for both us and the town, and hopefully helps some of the airport employees who want to walk over here at their lunchtime have a safer place to cross.
Thank you, Victoria.
Sure.
Okay. Is that Lou, you got anything else that we're here with, or is that basically your presentation today, or?
I think that's our presentation, and nothing but a thank you. We, every time I see this group, I have to remember how hard you all had to work to help us get to this point, and the idea that we're going to construction in literally, a month, a little over a month, is it's just thrilling. I personally, and for WS as an entity, we're just so appreciative of all the hard work you put in.
Well,
So,
I can only reinforce that, because going through the process over the past few years, it was very, very interesting, and it got the town and the airport and you and WS, everybody where we want to be.
Right. Yeah. This is truly, like, for me, this is a once in a lifetime project for me. And it's just so exciting to see us get to this point. I can't wait to watch us really bring this property back to life. Thank you all very much.
Yes, John Flores, Commissioner.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge really the driving force behind the releasing and the changing of the entire structure was the former council president, Jimmy Crocker, back in the day when I was VP with him. And we worked closely on making this happen. But Jimmy was the guy that forced the issue and really created, if you will, this opportunity. So I would be remiss if I didn't remind us of that.
Yeah.
Good point, John.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Lou, Victoria, and all your crew. We're glad you were able to join us today, and we greatly appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. Great to see you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take
Take
care.
care.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, moving right along here, we have COM 0323-2. Norm, would you read that in, please?
Yes, sir. Make sure I'm not muted. This is for the approval. The motion is to approve the proposed fiscal 2024 Cape Cod Gateway Airport operating budget totaling $12,030,401. The sponsor is the Finance Subcommittee, and it may be acted upon at this meeting. So could I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Management?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm sharing my screen with you. Can everybody see that? The slideshow, that is. Okay, everybody can see the slideshow? Great. All right. So management completed the 2024, that should say 2024 proposed budget, operating budget at the beginning of February. And we presented that to town of Barnstable leadership based on the annual budget schedule that they have. Typically, we bring that to them, we walk through it with them, and then we bring it to the airport commission and make any changes that the town wanted to see made, or if they had any comments on how we were going to proceed forward. So we did that back in February, and then on the 7th of this month, we presented that to the finance subcommittee. Both the finance subcommittee and town of Barnstable leadership approved of the approach and the justification for the budget. The budget was sent out to this body last week. We provided both the revenues and the expenses as proposed. And if you had a moment to take a look at the proposal, we always outline our justification and our rationale in the notes section. So you should have received the Excel spreadsheets. Today, I'm just going to give you a summary, but you should have received the Excel spreadsheets that had our justification and rationale for each of the line items for the budget. Just looking back real quick at our current fiscal year 2023 budget, just a brief summary. The budget was conservative. It accounted for us normalizing ourselves post-COVID. It was 9.7 million was what the budget was, just over 9.7 million. Just a quick synopsis of how we have tracked through the first 6 months of our budget. We tracked well with the overall budget with a current surplus of 5 million, and that's without our CARES Act or Cursor Act grants and other grants that we've received through the federal government. Revenue generation is meeting our budget goals without those grants as well, and we're doing better than expected in our revenue generators for rental cars and jet fuel sales. So you can see on the slide there about 97% above where we estimated we would be for our revenues in the first 6 months of the fiscal year. The same is true for our jet fuel sales. We were above what we anticipated. When I develop the budget each year, I am very, very conservative in what our revenues are. I don't want to over express what our revenues could potentially be. So I'm very conservative in that manner. You know, we do have some buildings that are older buildings. We have things that pop up through the year, through the fiscal year. So I just want to make sure that our expenses, that we have a strong identification of our expenses, but we're not overinflating what our potential revenue could be. Looking forward to the proposed budget for fiscal year 2024. It's at just over 12 million. Yes, that is a 23% increase overall in the budget. In speaking with the finance subcommittee, I just want to really stress this, that bulk of that increase is significant because of the jet fuel purchases and sales. So we're really estimating that our expenses for jet fuel is going to increase significantly, and you'll see that in a few slides, 5.6 million. With our sales or revenue anticipated at about 7.4 million. Again, conservative approach in all other areas. We did account for new tenants that we have in place, signed leases that we have in place. And we also added additional fee generation with new activity that we anticipate seeing throughout the next fiscal year. Looking at the budget and looking at the revenues a little bit more closely, as you can see, we're highlighting the fact that our jet fuel sales are going to be, we're anticipating them to be significant. Jet fuel sales are doing well. They're starting to bounce back to what I would call a normalization before COVID. And following month-to-month jet fuel sales, we're a little bit below where we were last fiscal year, which is to be expected. So we accounted for that in our revenue, but so it's not going to be as strong as we saw in fiscal year 2022, but it's still going to be a strong effort based on estimates and the outlook from various agency organizations that track jet fuel sales. So the bulk of the increase in our revenues, we see an increase from one fiscal year to the next, 5.5 million versus going into 24 at 7.4 million. In looking at other ancillary revenues, we're still predicting marginal improvements, again, being conservative. We wanted to reflect some new flights that we have anticipated coming into the airport with JetBlue's announcement of their additional flights to LaGuardia, as well as new leases that have been signed for new parcels of land. So we will see an increase in our landing fees for fiscal year 24. Again, with those new flights and corporate flights that we're still seeing a little bit of a rise. Car rental concessions, we are seeing that we're moving back to averages, back to what we saw in the past. We have seen over the past 2 years significant improvements in this area. But again, we tried to be conservative. We're showing it strong in our budget for fiscal year 2024, but we're not being overly, we're not examining that. We're making sure that we're strong. We're still going to receive some car rental concessions above and beyond where we're at today, but still not overinflating that. Vehicular parking, we're seeing some increases in that area. We do have right now our lease with our existing parking vendor is that we pay about $60,000 a year for construction of a portion of that parking lot. That has since ceased. So in December of last year, we've paid our debt. We no longer will see that. That's incorporated into the revenues. Land and facility leases, like I said, new tenants, lease renewals. Often most of them that did not have CPI or 3%, that has been included. We were able to update a lot of our leases, which were at older rates, to the new current rate that we have for land leases and building leases. So we're seeing improvements in there, about 86,000 for new leases for this next fiscal year. Moving on to our expenses. For our expenses, similar to 2023, but we're adding again jet fuel purchases, about 2.2 million is accounting for with the jet fuel purchases, excuse me. So you can see there the fuel purchases I've identified 3.5 versus 5.6 going into the expenses for next year. Additionally, we have resumed our seasonal positions. We hire seasonals for our summer season, May through September. They have increased wages across the board for all town of Barnstable. So we've followed suit and show that increased wage as well. We're seeing some significant healthcare increases and insurance premium increases. In speaking to the finance director, he was thinking about 5 to 10%. So we followed suit and show that here in our expenses as well. And then we have a lot of deferred asset management that has not been able to occur because of COVID. So we're bringing some of those deferred maintenance items for our assets back to the drawing board, back to the plan, excuse me. Our business plan goals, we're seeing some significant airline funds going towards airline development. We've ramped that up a little bit. Just so you know, I've reduced that line item for this business plan goal by about 65,000. We had 75,000 in the budget. The reduction accounts for the airport no longer going to be going forward with the airport roundtable event that we had proposed for May of 2024. That determination is based on discussions with our legal team and the director of finance, which both noted that the airport should really be seeking sponsorships for various elements of that event to meet the intent of airport revenue use. So we've decided to take about $65,000 off of the table for that particular event. And we're going in a different direction, but still in a direction that allows us to entice airlines to come to the airport. We will be working with an on-call contractor to an air carrier consultant to assist us with those services. And that's where some of the funds will go. Let's see here. I don't think I have any more comments or questions. This is just an overview of where we are in our grants, just so you're familiar with it. So we did receive over $22 million in grants. Obviously, most of you got my email today regarding the grant that's going to allow us to investigate using green technologies at the airport. It's part of the SMART Plan Department of Transportation grant program. And we just learned about that late last night, early this morning, which is great. So we're working on that with the RTA. So I will update this graph as well for that. But just in general, for the grants that were presented to the airport to combat COVID and the beginning of COVID, which is the CARES Act, the CURSA Act, and the ARPA grant, the ARPA Act. We are almost completely exhausted our CARES Act funds. We have used them to offset our operating budget, as well as some projects which hopefully will be completed by July, August timeframe. The CURSA Act, we've exhausted our funds there. We've used them mostly for operating budget to cover the increases in jet fuel purchases for jet fuel sales. And we have not used the ARPA grant yet, but we are working with the FAA to look at eligibility requirements for various projects. And then the next grants that are coming up for us are the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law Grant, the Bill Grant. That's a 5-year program. The first year, that first $1 million is being used for our environmental assessment. We should be receiving the grant for that for the commissioner to sign next week. And then the next year, the 2023 Bipartisan Law Grant, we're working with the FAA to utilize that for HVAC improvements within our terminal, which is an eligible item. Any comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Go right ahead.
Kate, going back to the BIL grants for 22 and 23, those have been awarded?
So the BIL grant, there's they identify 2 separate pockets for the BIL grant. There's one that's a competitive grant that you have to apply for to do terminal improvements. That's a competitive grant. That was the email that you sent out a couple of weeks ago, Mark. That is the competitive process for building improvements to terminal facilities. Then there is the Bill grant, that is a 5-year grant, and they will announce every fiscal year the award that they are providing to each airport. So we know our award for fiscal year 2022. That first year we are using it for the environmental assessment. Fiscal year 2023, we've already know what that award is. We don't actually have the grant. They just tell you what the dollar amount is. The fiscal year 2023, we've been in conversations with the FAA to be able to use that for upgrades to our HVAC system that's in the tower. It's an eligible item to be able to do that. Our HVAC system in both the terminal and the tower are now 12 years old. In the salt environment, we've noticed some deterioration in both of those facilities. We're also noticing some other problems that we've had with the HVAC system in the tower that's associated with possibly a reduction in grid power. So we're working through those issues, but they're eligible under that Bill grant.
They're eligible, but we have not been awarded that money yet, correct?
No, we'll be awarded the money for the EA next week. Like I said, I just got notification today from the FAA, and the 2023 budget, we have to submit for that.
Okay, so we haven't even submitted for it.
No, we haven't submitted for it yet.
Okay, because the chart kind of makes it look like we've got this allocation, and we don't really have an allocation for 2023 yet. We're going to submit for it.
It's been identified what our allocation could be for 2023, which is the just over $1 million, but we still have to submit to them an eligible project to utilize those funds.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Norm?
Yes, I mean, the finance subcommittee members have to indulge me. They hear me say this all the time. The infrastructure people, I like to share my pearls of wisdom, and unfortunately, 2 of them aren't with us at this point. But my overall comments on the budget, expenses are really pretty easy to project in a budget. Revenue is very difficult to project in a budget. And for the people in the public, every line item on the income and expense budget is very detailed and supported by a lot of factual analysis before they come up with a number. Jet fuel revenue and jet fuel expenses are the big numbers on those budgets. And those numbers are the most vulnerable because they're impacted by what happens in the marketplace about the price of fuel. So overall gross numbers may not turn out to be as accurate because they're affected by buying fuel in the open market. But management pays a great deal of attention to those numbers, and I'd like the public to understand that a lot of attention is paid to that. And the whole budgeting process is quite impressive when you see the amount of detail and the amount of effort that goes into each line item. So I thank you for your patience in listening to me about it.
Well, speaking for the chair, we appreciate your leadership in the finance subcommittee. With your background in finance.
Well, it's a team effort, Mr. Chairman. There's a lot of involvement by all of us involved, as you know.
Yep.
So
thank you very much.
Thank you, Norm.
Okay, we've got a motion and it's been seconded. We've had discussion. Forgive me. Any other further comments, discussion, questions? If not, I will call a question. All in favor, raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I
Opposed? Don't hear any. It's unanimous. Wendy, hi.
Hi.
I can see you now.
You snuck in on me.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Let's see, Commissioner Vice Chair Flores. John, would you read the next one, please?
Yes, this is item COM 0323-3. It's approval of a lease agreement by and between the town of Barnstable, Cape Cod Gateway Airport, and Michelle Kennedy doing business as Studio Gallery at the airport. The motion is to approve the lease by and between the Cape Cod Gateway Airport and Michelle Kennedy doing business as Studio Gallery at the airport effective April 1, 2023 for a 5-year term with 2 additional 5-year options at an annual rate of $4,200 per year. It's being sponsored by the Finance Committee and may be acted upon today.
For a second, please.
Seconded.
Discussion?
Sure, thank you. Thanks for reading that in. Michelle Kennedy Studios has been a welcome fixture at the airport for quite some time. It draws in many captive travelers to the studio with an interest in her color and her use of art and her uniqueness that she has in her artwork. It's a unique opportunity to showcase something special in our terminal, and it allows the airport to support our local artist on Cape Cod. It also very much so creates a sense of space. It's a place that is a welcome respite for travelers who might be a little stressed out from traveling. It also is a welcome respite for employees. Oftentimes I've seen employees just taking a break, sitting a moment with Michelle and chatting with her. I myself have done that in the past. I guess let's face it, travel can be stressful. It's not equivalent to going to the spa. It can be a rush moment while you're waiting to get to your airline. Obviously, it's a little bit of a slower pace here for our airport, but that still doesn't take away to the effect that the studio has on the facility. Michelle's art acts as an intervention. It comforts us, it eases us, it distracts us, it entertains us. It's a welcome distraction for many that are coming through the airport. And her art gives her art and her studio give the airport a sense for people, a place for people to unwind and take a load off for a few moments. Because of the unique role Michelle plays in the terminal and her unique services that are provided, the proposed lease rates are very reflective of the services being offered. They're not typical to what your other tenants in the terminal offer. It doesn't bring in the same monthly revenue as our other passenger service do. It's not akin to what we offer through the rental car companies or what is offered through the airline. So it's very different. It's very unique. The space itself was never intended to be a revenue generator. In fact, the art studio occupies space that otherwise we would have used for airport storage, for our admin use for airport storage. The former airport manager, Bud Brial, saw the potential of having something unique in the terminal building, such as this art studio, and he brought Michelle on board 12 years ago. She's still here. She's still creating beautiful art, and she gets a lot of feedback from people that visit our terminal. If the space wasn't being used for her art studio, we would reuse it for storage for the airport. So we'd revert it back to that. We'd prefer continuing, obviously, with the studio, allowing for that accessibility to meet a wider audience. In fact, in my notes, when I sent out the agenda last week, I provided for you an attachment which highlights all of her visitors, many of her recent visitors that have some amazing comments to make about Michelle and about how unique the space is at the airport. If you haven't had a chance to read those comments, I would urge you to do so. Many have indicated that it's very unique space and a welcome space, very not seen at many airports. And many of our passengers coming through this terminal building just absolutely love the fact that they can go in there, they can take a look at what she's painted, they can buy a painting, they can have a commissioned painting done for them. So it's really just a very unique space. And I think we as an airport are about having that uniqueness. We as an airport are about embracing what it is to be Cape Cod. And Michelle very much exudes that. The lease for the 5-year term plus 2 5-year renewal options is being presented. The 2023 annual rate would be $4,200 for that space, with annual increases thereafter starting in 2024 of 3% would be increased as well. Discussions with Michelle also include looking at a potential event in the future in the October timeframe that would include a gallery opening event to bring the community in as part of our community event series. That is all I have to present for this item. Any comments or questions?
I would say that in recognition not only of her talent, but she is a very, very pleasant and welcoming person. And my experience is that she's very, very pleased to, you know, talk about what she does and what she, and I don't think you could ask for anybody better in there. John?
Yeah, just for the sake of anyone listening, if anyone is looking to have a caricature of any character, friend, relative, or whomever, she's the person to go to. She does terrific work in that particular arena. I've bought some things from her in the past. She's very talented.
Mark, you there?
Yes. Just a quick question, Mr. Chairman. Katie, has there been any other interest in that space, or is this the only interest in that space?
This is the only interest.
Thank you.
Any other comments regarding Michelle? If not, I will call the question. All in favor signify aye. Aye,
Aye.
raise your hand.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, thank you. Opposed? Nope, doesn't seem to be any. Great.
Thank you all.
Let's see, on the next one, Commissioner Bradley, you want to bring that one in, please? Of course, Brad Bailey. Bradley.
Okay. COM 0323-4, motion to approve the bid award and subsequent contract for the fiscal year airfield pavement marking in the amount of $110,845. Sponsor Finance Subcommittee may be acted upon.
For a second, please.
Second.
Thank you.
And
Katie?
yes, thank you. And I'm going to take a break, and I am handing this item over to Matt Elia to present. Thank you, Matt.
Okay. Let me share the screen. Can everyone see the airfield painting?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
All right. So most people know that it's spring on Cape Cod because it gets warmer and the flowers start blooming. At the airport, we know it's spring because it's time to paint the airport. So a little bit different type of art than we were just talking about with Michelle, but just as important. So we don't paint every surface at the airport annually. We developed over a number of years a program based on need, on the wear and tear and the regular use, where we systematically cover the airport over a number of years. Previously, we had a 3-year on-call agreement. It was actually a 37-month agreement, so it encountered 4 rounds of painting. We worked with the procurement office to do that. And what that led to, because of the instability in pricing, is for the last couple of rounds of painting, we had a very good value for our money for painting the airfield. This year, we decided to go with a shorter term process so that we weren't locked into higher prices. Typically, we do this painting in the spring, and the reason for that is simple. During the winter, knock on wood, we've had a very good winter this year. We didn't have to do a lot of plowing, but even the little bit of plowing that we did, scraping those plow blades over the paint markings does damage. Not to mention that rain and then even sun bleaching, as I have recently learned more about, can cause wear and tear to the markings. So we maintain 312,000 square feet of painted marking on the airport to delineate things like runways, taxiways, aprons, and meet our Part 139 requirements. And it's a 2-step process. It's the paint, and it's also reflective media in the form of glass beads, which create a glowing sensation when they're lit up by the landing lights and taxi lights of aircraft for a visibility for vehicle operators and for pilots. So we're required to keep these markings brilliant, right, and the right color. So even staining, when you run a metal plow blade over paint, you can actually see the staining that will come with it. So why do we paint? Like I said, all of these things take the toll. Plus, we have aircraft that are taking off and landing, vehicles, and they're wearing the paint. So it's important that we continue to do this. And these are a couple of pictures of current conditions. And in the upper left, you can see that's a surface painted hold position sign. It's essentially a giant stop sign for a runway. In this case, runway 6, as you might guess. And you can see that over the course of the winter with scraping plows and then running our sweeper over to pick up sand, that we've started to erode that white paint there. The lower left, you can see some of the yellow paint is chipped off of a taxiway center line. And on the right side, you can see a runway edge marking where the paint is starting to flake off. This paint, obviously the plow blades and the edge markings of runways, a little bit of tidbit here, are not required to have the reflective media, so it's only the paint. So generally you go longer between those, but this one obviously is in need of a new coat of paint. So kind of our scope for this year, high level, is this portion of the airport, which makes sense because runway 624 and all of the stub taxiways that tie into it are going to be reconstructed this year. So we're not going to paint something that we're then going to pull up, rebuild, and have to paint again. So that helped us predict our path for this year. We planned ahead for this, and we have $125,000 in the existing fiscal year 23 budget right now. So we went through a procurement process. We worked closely with the town of Barnstable procurement office. Credit to Kathleen in the procurement office and Chris from our team, who did a lot of legwork on this with Airport Solutions Group. But we worked through a process during February to post a bid advertisement. We held a pre-bid meeting. The bids were due, opened, and then Airport Solutions Group and airport staff and procurement all reviewed the bids, made sure we came up with a successful bidder. In the bid responses, we had 2 responses to the bid. Highlight Airfield Services, we reviewed both the total cost and then each year, and I'll explain what that means in a second. But that bottom line there shows that the successful bidder was 19% less than the engineer's estimate, and the high bidder was about $1,000 over. So ASG, I think, did a good job estimating what we were going to have here. And they used information from our runway project bid and the painting values there to be able to do that, because as I mentioned, the price of paint has been very volatile. And if you look in the yellow box there, the markings are 75 cents per square foot, essentially is the price of paint. And it varied by color in our prior project, but there were some colors we were painting for less than 50 cents a square foot. So you can see that the price of paint has increased just like everything else. So our contract value here is going to be $110,845 for this fiscal year. So the term is from now until the end of the fiscal year. There is a second year that's at our option. Based on the pricing we got, that seems advantageous, but we want to see how they do first. The work will all be completed in 14 days from issuing a notice to proceed. So We started engaging with them. Obviously, we have a lot of things coming up. We'd like to get this painting done before we close the other runway so that we can keep the airport open at all times. And there is some painting that will occur in the runway intersection. We handle that the same way that we always do. It's planned for Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday overnight between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. to have the smallest impact to operations. So the request is that the commission approve the contract and that we move forward. As I mentioned, where we have the option for a second year. We also, as with any of our painting projects, have the ability at any point to change the scope. So if we determine that they're not doing a good job, we're able to give them a stop and cease, and we only have to pay for what has been painted at that point. So we have some added flexibility there. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Any commissioners? Yes, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt, so the winning bid was 205,000 and we're looking at awarding 110.8 thousand. The 205, that was for 2 years worth of work and the second year is optional. Is that explain the discrepancy?
Correct. So the 205 is the total of the 2 years. What we're awarding is the 1 year.
Okay.
So we had to compare both 1 year for the first year for both vendors, second year for both vendors, and then overall. So we're going for the 110, which is the first year for the successful bidder. They were also the low bidder for the second year and overall, but we have to look at that overall number, which is the 205 that you mentioned.
Okay, and then we have the option for the second year if we choose to exercise it.
Correct.
Great. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you, Mark. Hearing no more, I will call a question. All in favor of this motion signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed? None. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I
Thank you,
will
Matt.
read, I'll go ahead and read this one. This is COM 0323-5 travel approval letter for the airport staff. And this is a motion to approve the travel letter for airport operations staff to travel out of state to attend aircraft rescue, firefighting, and live burn training as required by federal mandate. The sponsor is the Finance Subcommittee. It may be acted upon. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you.
Great.
Matt
Thank
or
you.
Katie?
Thank you very much. So at the request of town manager, airport manager with the airport management was asked to supply travel approval letters for various conferences, seminars, training for all airport staff. You may remember correctly, I've submitted one for myself for the NBAA conference that I went to just recently. So the fiscal year 2023 budget approved funding for various training conferences for our staff to ensure that they're properly trained to implement all aspects of the job and to meet FAR, Federal Aviation Regulation Part 139 requirements and certification requirements. So airport management is happy to say that we recently promoted one of our staff members to a vacant position that we had in airport operations. So as you know, our airport operators are also our first responders for aircraft rescue and firefighting. This requires him to receive his initial 40 hours of training in aircraft firefighting training. He will be doing so in Kentucky. The location in Kentucky has been chosen by the airport as well, not only by this airport, but by Martha's Vineyard Airport as well, because of the content that they provide to our staff. They have a really good syllabus for the training that they provide to our staff. It's 40 hours worth of life-saving techniques, aircraft rescue. So obviously we want to make sure that we pick one that is ideal. Also, we look for one that is close to our facility. The FAA posts the list of approved vendors that can provide this type of training on an annual basis, and we go through that list. But we've been very successful with the program in Kentucky. So we'll be sending him to Kentucky. Additionally, we have 5 staff members for fiscal year 2023 that will be attending their annual required live fire training. It's a live burn. We do it once in April for half of our staff, and then again in the fall timeframe, September, October, for the other 5 members of the airport operations staff. That will be in fiscal year 2024. So this request is to approve both of those, one for the local fire training for our 5 staff members that will take place in New Hampshire. And then obviously for the one promoted staff member that will be working in airport operations that will be going for his 40-hour training in Kentucky. Any comments or questions? And both of these are in our budget already that were approved in the fiscal year.
Safety wins.
Yes. Any comments or questions on the approval letter?
Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, signify or say aye and raise your hand, please.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you very much. Let's see. Wendy, are you in a position to read anything into this, or do you want me to have somebody else? Oh, okay. Norm, would you read the next one, please?
Yes, sir. And I believe it's
-6.
yep. It's a motion to approve amendment number 1 by and between Cape Cod Gateway Airport and Judith Getz for on-call professional media services for a 3-month term ending April 30th, 2023 for not to exceed total amount of $9,300. The sponsor is the Finance Subcommittee, and it may be acted upon at this meeting.
May I have a second, please?
Seconded.
Second.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So both our current contract with Judith Getz for on-call professional media services and our social media content management has expired. And we are asking to extend the existing contract that we have in place with Judith through the end of April 2023. We feel that this is adequate time for such services before our bidding process goes out for our communications manager contract. That has been submitted to the procurement office today. So that will be going out soon. This will get us to that bridge. This will bridge the gap, in other words, before we get that contract out. The original contract that we have in place with Judith is $24,000 annually. The amount of this amendment number 1 is for a total of $9,300. What that does is it adds 3 months of social media, and the proposal was attached to the amendment that I've provided to you, and a 3-month extension also for her existing services that she's offering the airport through her media services. The revised contract amount will go from $24,000 to $33,300 for amendment number 1. Any comments or questions on this item?
Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Katie, the motion is to approve a 3-month extension to the existing contract. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the term ends April 30th, which means we're more than 50% past that 3-month extension. So how have we been paying without this having already been approved?
So we have not paid for her services for January and February.
Okay, is that deficit spending? We're obligated, right?
We just haven't had time to bring this in forward in front of the commission to be able to do this and to amend this contract. I had to get some clearances also from procurement to be able to do this. It just took some time.
Okay, are there any legal concerns about this? It just seems unorthodox.
We have done this in the past. I'm not the only department that has done this in the past, but we have done this in the past where we have services for an on-call that haven't been put out to bid yet. There's been a little bit of delay of getting things out in the procurement office due to the level of work that they have through the procurement office. They only have 3 people in that office to handle all of the town of Barnstable. So unfortunately, we get in line for when we have our procurement to go out.
Okay, I'm certain that going forward, we will endeavor to get these approved prior to obligating ourselves to paying them.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Yes, John.
It's just an observation. We're paying her $24,000 right now on an annual basis. And based on the new contract, if we did it on an annual basis, it would be $37,200. I'm just curious what increased services or substantial new responsibilities she might have to justify that substantial increase.
Yes, thank you for asking. So the increase includes what she's already working for us right now, which is her on-call professional media services. She does all of our press releases. She helps us with getting content out on the radio. She helped us with our most recent commercials that we have in place with the Cape Cod broadcasting. And then in general, so that covers her general media output. The social media content, excuse me, has been handled by the quotient group, completely separate group. But it's also part of her scope of work. We identified when we initially worked with Judith that social content could be part of those jobs that she works on for us as well. So the additional dollar amount is that monthly fee in order to provide post on our social media, report on social media insights. In other words, how are we reaching people? Is our post getting out there? Do we need to make a change in tactic for how we're reaching people? She also is creating graphics and videos for our social media content, covering all of our events and different aspects that we cover here at the airport. So that additional fee is what has been added. It's $1,100 per month to provide those social media services. So for the 3-month period, it's when you add that to her $2,000 per month for her monthly retainer for media outreach, it's $3,100 additional per month for the next 3 months.
We have seen, I mean, we can measure the level of social related media that's improving, whether it's through SEO numbers or other evaluative tools that you have in place.
Yes, we get monthly reports that identify how well different posts are doing. We get weekly and monthly reports to identify how well certain posts are doing. And then we put together a plan for the following week of what those posts may be so that we can get the best content. We also noticed that a lot of our posts, when we're referring to another event that's happening on Cape Cod and we refer or hashtag another entity on Cape Cod, that also gets a lot more posts and likes for the airport because you're bringing that content together. So it showed us how to better present ourselves on social media, which is great. I'm glad we have those reporting capabilities.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, I'll call a question. All in favor, signify aye and raise your hand, please. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, that passes. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, -7 monthly update on the business plan.
Sure. Let me just open that up for you real quick. Give me a second so I can share this with you. I typically provide this update to the infrastructure subcommittee. This is the item that was given to them on the 1st of March in anticipation of their March 7 meeting. I'll go through this as quickly as I can, but you do have a copy of this as well. Anything that we do that is geared towards our business plan development or our business plan initiatives is highlighted in yellow. So every month when I update this for the infrastructure subcommittee, they can readily see the new items that have been added. What I haven't added here was the recent approval of our grant that we received through MassDOT and through DOT for green initiatives and planning for green initiatives here at this airport. So obviously that's breaking news, so it wasn't added to this report here. But just looking at our goals, our business plan goals, goals A through D are to, and there's not a priority order here. This is just where they shake out: maximizing general aviation activity at the airport, diversifying our revenue streams, becoming a regional air transportation leader, and then enhancing our airport image and branding. Obviously, you know that a lot of the events that take place at the airport a lot of the things that we do are geared towards meeting these goals. So when we start looking at maximizing our general aviation activity at the airport, obviously we have a lot of community event series that are coming up. Many of those do include activity that is geared or highlighted towards general aviation pilots, with workshops and seminars and forums that will be handled at the airport and with various events. Just to give you an example, we will be working towards an event in July, what we have called Hangers and Hamburgers. We're coordinating with the Massachusetts Air and Space Museum to offer shuttle services to and from the airport to their Main Street facility. And they will have seminars, forums, and the ability to visit with the museum. And then we'll also be offering them a boxed lunch. So that's a way to combine the two activities, you know, to give people an understanding of what's new with the Massachusetts Air and Space Museum, but also providing that activity that we have heard time and time again from our pilots that they would like to see at the airport. So that's one. We are in significant planning for the events in September, especially the Great Day for a Gate at the Gateway. We've been working with a volunteer crew that we're calling the Friends of the Gateway that have volunteered their time to take on task management for various aspects of the day. That task management includes managing different activities that we have presented for that day, such as kids activities, so that the kids can learn more about aviation and aviation education. We have the Women in Aviation, Girls in Aviation program that will take place on the same day here at the airport during our event. We will have static aircraft displays. We will have a military present for this event. The event theme itself is called Nurturing. It's a great day for at the Gateway, but it's nurturing the spirit of flight as well as honoring our military. So throughout the day, we'll have military and aviation activities throughout the day. You will see hopefully some military bands that will be present for the day's events. We will have other activities such as pilot activities. So we'll have seminars and forums for pilots that will be held over at the Allies Aviation hangar. So we're really, you know, we're here in March, the event is in September, and we really have gotten a lot accomplished in planning for this event. So again, it's geared towards a couple of goals. Goal A for maximizing GA activity at the airport, but it's also enhancing the airport's image and its branding as well. Moving on, we're currently working through our NetJets jet fuel program. We've been in discussions with them quite often about what that program might look like, but it's still in progress. So we'll continue on with that. In regards of our land leases and hangar development, obviously we have an executive session discussion in March to talk about what we want to see move forward with 110 Mary Dunn Road, which is also known as Air Cape Cod facility. So we'll be talking through that and proceeding with that. In regards to our media outreach and making sure that there is a presence of the airport and that the community is aware of the airport, we have been working with the Cape Cod Broadcasting to establish a calendar year 2023 radio and digital marketing. This is something that Judith has helped us with as well. It will coincide with the airport's events and also highlights JetBlue's new flight to LaGuardia. You may have heard, since we've been running the ads for all of March and into April, the radio spots that are for JetBlue that were recorded and completed. And if you want, I can play the recording, but you may have already heard them on the radios. So again, that's occurring now this month and next month. So you'll hear a lot of that. In addition to the radio spots, management asked for CCB to look at additional marketing and outreach opportunity that we might have in the broader New York and New Jersey areas. So we are working with them. We've already signed a contract with them. We're doing some mobile conquesting and online audio, which help highlight Hyannis. So in other words, as people scroll and start looking for places to stay on Cape Cod, or if they look at Cape Cod, that automatically, that search gets picked up on their Facebook or the Instagram platforms that they may have been using, and it automatically targets their behavior, and it will automatically link them to the airport, business travel, frequent travelers, and it links them to the airport services. So it's, Big Brother is watching. Yes, that happens. This is common in marketing for various facilities. So we are doing that now through geofencing and geo-targeting for JFK Airport, LaGuardia Airport, and various towns and cities in the New York and New Jersey area. So for the online content, we're targeting the behaviors of frequent travelers, summer travelers through this area, family vacations, and trying to woo people from various towns in that New York and New Jersey geography to utilize the airport for their transition and for their travel needs to Cape Cod. So the advertisement that will run for that is April 1 and May 30 through May 30. Basically 2 months of constant advertising to hopefully reach over 200,000 impressions of the airport and at a total monthly investment of $5,000. So that was part of our overall fiscal year 2023 budget for marketing. Aviation education, we're proceeding right along. We're hosting our third high school student from Monomoy. She's pictured here in the middle. She has been out to Atlantic Aviation for a tour and to learn about what they do as a aviation business. When we have our interns here at the airport and on site with us, we schedule different times with them to go to our different tenants' locations to make sure that they're learning an array of different types of potential jobs that they could possibly be in the aviation industry. So we're working through that with our third high school aviation intern, and we have already selected our fourth, which is a Barnstable high school student that will be starting this fall. Moving on to diversification of our revenue streams, goal B, we have commenced new leases and new discussions with Pandavion. Obviously, Michelle Kennedy was subject to today's discussion, and I have been in conversations with Ideal Flooring. As you know, Ideal Flooring is located in close proximity to where the old Mildred's restaurant location is. They have a building right there. They do lease some land from the airport for parking and for their loading dock, but they are looking to expand. So we're talking about expansion opportunities for them as well. In regards to regional transportation leader, we're still working through that. We intend to hire an air carrier consultant that can assist us in this area. We did talk a little bit about the airport roundtable event. We are no longer going to proceed forward on that event, but we are going to proceed forward with the air carrier consultant that can help us in terms of getting out there, reaching these air carriers that might have the ability to come and operate here at Hyannis. Let me move on to our enhancing the airport image and branding. We've had some really, some true successes this year and previous years. So we are continuing to work through our image, the airport image, and making sure that our community has the opportunity to learn more about the airport through our community event series. We just had a very successful Scout Sleepover. The Scout Sleepover happens in March each year. We had 24 scouts that were present at the airport. They learned all about the forces of flight and aviation. I think most of the commissioners saw what their agenda entailed. We had some commissioners that were actually present for that event. We had scouts flying in flight simulators. Cape Air was on hand to help with that. They went into their Cessna 402 flight simulator. We had captain that flew in from Boston on a Cessna 402 that was able to give the scouts an understanding of what a pre-flight briefing looks like, and he brought them around the aircraft. Matt and our team and Chris worked in the terminal at different stations to make sure that the kids understood the forces of flight through various activities and games. And our own Commissioner Norm Weil was there to make sure that kids understood how they would go about looking at a flight chart and making a destination from point A to point B using that chart. So all in all, it was a very successful event. And then moving on, we will be working towards our other events that we have here planned as well. If you haven't had the opportunity to look at the Discover Barnstable podcast or listen to it, you can get it on Barnstable's website. You can also go to your Apple Podcasts or wherever you get podcasts so that you can hear what's happening in the town of Barnstable. Right now, they are having communications and conversations with most of the department heads. And I was one of the department heads that was interviewed just recently with a 20-minute podcast that basically was put on the website and put on the Discover Barnstable podcast if you have a chance to read it. June will be our public meetings. The date itself is still to be determined in June. And it should say June 2023, not 2024. I apologize. That will entail more investigation that we're doing as part of the environmental assessment. It is based on the scope of work that has been developed through the MEPA process, which required us to look at some additional analyses that we did not initially include. We've also had some significant conversations with the town of Yarmouth. We've had several meetings with them to identify what their residents are concerned with and to identify different analysis that we can do that will make sure that their thoughts and concerns are being heard. So we're working through that. So that's kind of all I have for the business plan update. Any other comments or questions on that?
Norm?
Just two things. I had the privilege of attending the Cub Scout event. It was terrifying because I do not have children, and I was not quite prepared for the energy level of 22 young men and women, and it was thrilling. Which brings me to the second point, which is I also participated in a meeting for the planning for the two events coming up in September. And in both cases, I want the commission to know that they should be very proud of their front-facing personnel in the form of Katie and all the other staff members, Matt and Chris, who distinguish themselves in public in the way they present themselves in the airport. So I'd be remiss if I didn't point that out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Norm.
Mark, did you have a?
Yeah, going back to regional transportation leadership, Katie, I had forwarded you an email or to the commission too about Transcend Air and the VTOL service that they're working on initiating between Boston and New York. And I was wondering if you guys have any plans on reaching out to them and seeing if we could be a candidate for their service.
Yeah, we definitely do. And thank you for sending us that email. We definitely do. You know, with all of the activity that we have going on, it's on our radar, just as my conversations have been with Joby and Beta and other aviation professionals that are looking to go in that direction with electric. So they're on our list. We definitely want to reach out to them. I think having an on-call consultant to help us in that manner would also be great. I've already spoken to a couple of on-call consultants that do that type of work. They are getting more involved in the electric aviation endeavor, which is great because I think there's a real market here for this airport with electric aviation.
Okay.
Thank you. I do too. I think it's a great opportunity for us and encourage any actions we can take to bring them to our pad.
Yes, I agree. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments regarding this? Let's see, what do we want to do? Airport, oh yeah, -8. Mark, would you read that in, please?
Yes, this is 0323-8, approval of Allies air name change and sign updates. The motion is to approve the Allies air name change to Gull Air and signage updates to the building, sponsored by the Infrastructure and Marketing Subcommittee, and this may be acted upon.
Any second, please?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Katie?
I do have some background that I was going to offer, but I noticed that Mr. Bill McGrath is with us today. Bill, you can certainly say a few words and then I can go into my background. But we're glad that you're here, and just take yourself off mute if you want to say a few words.
I think I hit the right button.
You
Hello,
did. Hi,
Bill.
Bill.
Hey, what do you know? I'm pretty challenged with all these gadgets.
This is
Yeah,
sort of
basically,
history repeating itself.
Yeah. I've been working with Allies there for a couple of years now, just trying to work with them and move the process forward in getting commuter authority. And it was decided some time ago to kind of rebrand the company, trying to do it in conjunction with the commuter authority, which seems to continue to be rather elusive getting that approved. So bottom line, we just, the decision was made that let's rebrand the company. We've officially changed the name from Allies Air LLC to Gull Air Holdings LLC is the corporate entity. And then approvals from the FAA to do business as Gull Air. So that's really the gist of this, really just trying to move things forward. So, I've prepared and given all those documents to Katie, which she's had as far as the official name change. And now the next step here, we just like to get the signs changed on the building. I have the sign company standing by, just waiting for approval on the new signage.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Bill, do you want to give any feedback right now about what your intentions are with the company, or do you want to hold off on that for now?
No, I'm happy to share that. Again, working with both the FAA and the DOT, getting the commuter authority, but the real goal, there's some new investors, all Nantucket people who have gotten involved with this company, and the goal really is to provide fairly 10 plus round trips a day, and really try to regenerate that Hyannis to Nantucket market that has been certainly has been underserved over the last number of years. So that's really the main goal. I mean, currently the company is doing on-demand charters. We'll continue to do that, but the focus will be really on trying to provide high frequency scheduled service between Hyannis and Nantucket, similar to what we've done in past years. And that's really why they've asked me to help, share with my past experience and trying to, regenerate that into the future. The intent is also to get back into the air freight business and, just provide those services. It's really kind of a community thing for the Nantucket community. So that's really the background.
Thank you, Bill. I really appreciate it. I think you took all of my talking points, but
Sorry.
it's really exciting to see some movement in this area. Allies has been with us for quite some time now, and we thank you for letting us use your building for the event in September. That's really great. But what's
absolutely.
really great is what you guys are trying to do there through air, is to bring back that frequency to the islands, which is sorely needed. I hear from many users of the airport, for local businesses that rely on those types of services, and they're just really dying for that frequency to come back up. So that would be great, for a great boon for the airport, that's for sure.
Well, that's the hope. And we're, I'd like to say we're close with those final approvals, but it's been rather challenging. I think right now we're going to focus on, continuing to do the on-demand stuff and, probably into this season. I think we'll probably now be looking at hopefully launching the schedule service next fall, but we'll see how it goes. It's just been very challenging getting these approvals done.
All right. Well, we have room in our terminal for you.
Well, thank you.
Good to see you, Bill, and thank you for coming, and thanks for your efforts.
Just
very well. Very well.
Bill, just a comment. I think it was 45 years ago, when you first started Gull Airline, you had a little gate over the old terminal. Not only were you selling the tickets, you were loading the plane and you were flying the plane back and forth between Hyannis and Nantucket.
Yeah.
I took that many times.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
welcome
hard to
back.
believe
I
it's
guess
that many years ago.
It's man, it was in the early 70s. What goes
Yes,
around comes around. So welcome back and great to see you again.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Bill, once again, thank you. And this is a motion. It's been approved. It's been read in and seconded. Any other questions and comments? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor, signify aye and raise your hand, please. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Congrats, Bill.
Thank you very much.
Unanimously.
Look.
Okay, looking ahead here, Katie, I've got special committees and I've got updates, but there's also the executive session. So do you want to run through? There are no reports of special committees. The noise report's not due. Yarmouth representative is not at present. Do you want to run through some of these updates before we go into the executive session?
Yeah, I can run through them real quick for you if you'd wish.
We thank you, everybody, for the patience. This has been a very full agenda.
Yes, thank you. As you know, Southern Airways Express will not be returning for this season, 2023. You've probably have seen the news that they've pulled out of the market, out of the area. So they won't be here. They won't be in Nantucket, New Bedford. So they've pulled out of the region for now. We've have a good working relationship with Southern Airways Express, and in particular with Mark, who has been our main contact, Mark Sassari, for the company. We were hopeful that they were going to bring on 30-passenger Saab aircraft, but they've decided to reutilize those aircraft in other locations that they currently have within their route map for now. So hopeful that maybe at some point in time, Southern Airways will be back here at the airport. I've already gone through the monthly business plan review. I won't go through the financial review. You all have a copy of that. I briefly went over that as well. So as part of the budget, so you do have some of that information. We have for our projects, just really quick, Chris, if you can give a quick briefing of where we are on our four major projects that we have currently.
Yes, ma'am. I'll keep it extremely brief. The biggest news I'll just mention is for the 624 runway rehab project or reconstruction project. By the time we meet next month, that project should be underway. I expect to give NTP on that project on April 3rd. And so we should start being full force on the 624 project. And as you know, a month after that starts, maybe a month and a half, we'll start the EMAS project. So that's the most exciting news looking forward. Current projects that are going on right now is the T-hanger project. Our plan is to pour the slab for the T-hanger in the next 2 weeks. So that's about 310 cubic yards of concrete. That's a decent amount of concrete for a hanger job. So very excited to get that done. And then the other project is the ARF Ops remodel project. It is on schedule, and we anticipate a middle of July opening on that site. So real quick update. Any questions from anyone on the board?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, Chris.
Yes, ma'am.
Real quick, just looking at our list under updates, procurement, like I said, the communications management and media services will be out to bid in the April timeframe. The airline consultant, and speaking with the procurement office, they can get us in for June to get that on the list and on their agenda. We will be having future conversations about the cafe moving forward. I did have a very good meeting yesterday with an interested party in the use of the cafe, so we'll continue those conversations. They are a caterer, but they also do have a facility located next to the airport, so they wanted to talk a little bit more about using the cafe, especially in our summer season. May through October is what they were thinking, so that they can provide food services for the terminal building. So I'll be in further conversations with them. We are working through, like I said, our environmental assessment. Our website is up to date as always on the data and the content that we have, and also our public outreach efforts. It's all on our website, so you can take a look there of what has been produced. Our team is working at responding to the comments that were received as part of the state Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act comment period. So they're working through that and provided additional scope to the project based on those comments. One of them you heard here today, which is to analyze Joint Base Cape Cod as an option or as an alternative. So we are looking at that. Next meeting is in June of 2023. PFAS, in regards to that, we're still continuing on with our phased reporting as required by DEP. Phase 5 is underway now. That will be due at the end of this year in October. So we're working towards that. We also had a very good meeting with the Barnstable County Fire in regards to their need to get on airport to take additional samples that they will need for their analysis that they will be working on also for the same process to respond to DEP. So we'll keep you in the loop on that. We've already spoken about events that we have had and upcoming events, so I don't think I need to go over that. And with that, I do not have any additional updates to provide.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, comments? Very well, thank you very much. Now, I guess is our final, believe it or not, final item for the day. As Chair of the Airport Commission, I move to go into executive session pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30 Alpha, Paragraph 21, Sub A, Sub 3, to discuss strategy with respect to the lease of real property by and between Cape Cod Gateway Airport and a future lessee for 110 Mary Dunn Way, as a discussion in open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, the Airport Commission. This meeting will not reconvene in open session after the executive session. So Sue, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Had to unmute. Sure. Chairman Griffin,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Flores,
Yes.
Clerk Weil,
Yes.
Commissioner Beerworth,
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner Gia. Okay, we are adjourning the regular session at 6:08 p.m. and we will re-adjourn in executive session.